We are now in part four of our discussions of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. And the notion that is introduced in this discussion is that of the highest good. We've discussed the good before. Now we move on to discuss the highest good. More than that, we've discussed the notion of the good. We've discussed that some goods are superior to others, such as when ends are superior to means, or when product of an activity is superior to the activity itself, or when activity is undertaken for the sake of activity, and in that case, the activity is not inferior to the product of it. So, in this part, we introduce the notion of the highest good. We will discuss what it is, and then we will move on to discuss whether it exists. So, if one good is sought for the sake of another, and that good in turn sought for the sake of another, and that last good is sought for the sake of another, and so on, should we say that this chain of goods simply goes on indefinitely, without an end, or an ultimate and fundamental good? For example, if we choose to eat breakfast for the purpose of having energy, and we choose to have energy for the sake of going to school, and we choose going to school for the sake of education, and we choose to have education for the sake of having a better job, and we choose to have a better job for the sake of having more money and time, and we choose to have more time and money for the sake of having a house and going on vacations and buying various things, etc. Does this list of purposes or goods simply go on indefinitely and without an end and without a final and ultimate purpose and good? There are 3 points to be made here. One, each successive good is superior to the preceding good. For example, in the example above, energy is superior good to breakfast, and education is a more superior good to both breakfast and energy. The more final, later, the good is in the chain, the more superior that good is. Ends justify the means, not the other way around. Not in the sense that any means can be undertaken to reach an end, but in the sense that the reason why that means is undertaken at all is due to the end. And if that end was not pursued, then the means would not be undertaken either. Second point, we recognize a concept of the highest good here. We have asked whether there is the highest good at the end of the chain or not. The highest good is that good for the sake of which all other goods are pursued, but it is not pursued for the sake of any other good. Note that the highest good may not be the last in the temporal chain of goods, as in the order of time, but it is the last in the logical chain of goods, in the order of priority. For example, an athlete may train, compete, and then train again. In the temporal order, training comes after competition. But in the logical order, competing is always the last and the highest good here. Third point, Aristotle argues that there is and must be the highest good, that the highest good exists, in other words. He argues that in order for us to understand and have knowledge about any of the previous goods, there must be the highest good that is definite. If it was not definite, then it would not be possible to know. And since the purpose of our thinking, discussion, and inquiry in ethics is knowledge about how to choose the goods that we pursue, then there must be a definite highest good that we have to figure out in this inquiry. If what comes later in the logical chain of goods justifies what is prior, and we would not be able to state what is at the end of that chain, then none of the goods before would be justified either. Aristotle's point, ultimately, to know any of the goods in the chain of goods, we need to know the ultimate good, what all those goods are for. And therefore, in our inquiry, the point of which is knowledge in ethics, for our purposes, the highest good exists.